In his first week as Barcelona manager, Johan Cruyff watched a youth match where a young Pep Guardiola was playing right midfield. At halftime, Cruyff went over to the youth team manager and told him to play Pep as the midfield pivot. Many people say that the number 6 position is the hardest to play in football, but Guardiola adapted immediately and thrived. Later in his development, Barca actually wanted to sell Pep, deeming him too skinny to play senior football. But Cruyff insisted that he stay, and by the 1991-92 season, Guardiola had become the starting defensive midfielder in Barcelona's dream team. He won 6 La Liga titles, the European Cup, the Copa del Rey, and a Cup Winners' Cup in his time at Barca, establishing himself as one of the best defensive midfielders of his generation. However, Pep started obsessing over the tactical side of football thanks to the training sessions of Cruyff. He was taught in the principles of total football and learned to see the sport in a different way to others. And towards the end of his playing career, Pep chose to pursue knowledge instead of further glory. The purpose for this was that Guardiola was plotting a legendary managerial career. Hello, my name is Gareth from Eno Football, and this is why Pep Guardiola is the greatest manager of all time. Pep Guardiola started setting the scene for his managerial career in June of 2007 when Barcelona named him manager of the B team. And after a poor start to the season, he tore up the rulebook. Pep began doing things his own way, disbanding the C team and merging it with the B team, introducing fines and demanding a level of professionalism that wasn't previously seen at this level. Guardiola made a similar impact in Barcelona's developmental setup as Johan Cruyff, focusing on technical ability and instilling the principles of total football. Pep quickly identified Sergio Busquets and Pedro Rodriguez as key players as Barca B won the title and promotion back to the third tier of Spanish football. The higher-ups at Barcelona were impressed with Guardiola's attention to detail and tactical ability. Some even said that the B team were better run than Frank Rijkaard's first team, but they were unsure if Pep was ready for senior management. Michael Laudrup and Jose Mourinho were considered for the first team job, but once again Johan Cruyff intervened and put his faith in Guardiola, advising Barca president Laporta to go with Pep, and in May 2008 it became official. There's this myth that Pep Guardiola was handed everything when he became Barcelona manager in 2008. He did inherit a great squad, but it was a team that had just finished third in La Liga and hadn't won a major trophy in 2 years. But Pep rebuilt Barca to fit his vision. Big name stars like Deco and Ronaldinho were sold, with trust being placed in Messi, Xavi and Iniesta. These were already arguably world-class players, but Pep elevated them to all-timer status. Guardiola did spend money with Barca, but not a ludicrous amount. And more important than any signing was the trust that Pep placed in youth products, Busquets and Pedro. After winning 6 trophies in his first year, Pep wanted to evolve the team. Zlatan Ibrahimovic joined from Inter in one of the worst transfers ever. Samuel Eto'o went the other way and won the treble, whilst Ibra fell out with Pep. Guardiola had to evolve again, this time taking inspiration from Luciano Spalletti's use of Francesco Totti and moulding Messi into a false 9 role, whilst signing Spain's deadliest striker and playing him out wide. What followed in 2010-11 was, according to many people, the greatest club team of all time. Once again, Barcelona won the Champions League and La Liga with ease, and in just his 3rd year of management, it felt like Pep Guardiola had completed football. He only managed to win the Copa del Rey in his final season, but after a sextuple, a 3-peat of La Liga titles, and arguably the greatest season of club management ever, Guardiola sought a new challenge. Pep Guardiola failed at Bayern Munich because he didn't win the Champions League. Have you ever heard this myth? Bayern reached 3 semi-finals under Pep, losing out to Real Madrid's La Decima team and Luis Enrique's Barcelona treble winners. Bayern were capable of beating these teams, but also the weaker team on paper, and they had injuries, so these losses do not equal failure. In his final year, Guardiola lost on away goals to Atletico Madrid, but one draw doesn't turn 3 successful years into a failure. Pep inherited an incredible squad, but also lost key players, bringing in younger names like Thiago and Kimmich to build for the future. Whilst the likes of Alonso, Muller, Mandzukic and Philipp Lahm all saw their prime years under Pep. Not to mention Lewandowski, who went to another level after signing in 2014. Guardiola won his first Bundesliga title in a record speed of just 27 matches, whilst also winning the DFB Pokal to secure a double. His second season was his worst, but he still won the league, equaling the record for the least goals conceded with 18. Then, in his final year, he broke that record with 17, whilst winning his second domestic double. Over Pep's 3-year spell, Bayern kept a record of 59 Bundesliga clean sheets, scoring 254 goals in 102 matches, another record. A three-peat of Bundesliga titles plus 2 double-winning years, the most dominant German team domestically, is somehow considered a failure for Guardiola. Pep Guardiola's tactical evolution at Man City is truly phenomenal. When he first arrived, Guardiola played with traditional wingers in Sterling and Sane, with Aguero up top, moving David Silva from a number 10 position into a deeper Xavi-esque role, unleashing his prime years. He overhauled the defence, signing ball players like Aymeric Laporte and Ederson, hitting 100 points in his second season and winning 4 trophies in his third. However, City struggled at the start of the 2020-21 season, and it was Arrigo Sacchi who told Pep to go back to his pressing game from Bayern. Guardiola played a false 9 whilst utilising late runs from Gundogan and inside forwards to replace the goals. He also inverted fullbacks to dominate the midfield area, creating a team much more capable of overcoming Jurgen Klopp's gegenpress monsters, modelled on Guardiola's Bayern. 2 more Premier League titles followed, but the Champions League eluded City, which brings us to arguably Pep's greatest tactical adaptation in 2022-23. The signing of Erling Haaland, amongst other issues, left the team a little unbalanced, but Pep adapted, calling on the lessons he learned as a player to do so. Johan Cruyff was an arrogant man, and before the 1994 Champions League final, he dismissed Fabio Capello's AC Milan. Sticking 100% true to the principles of total football, he believed that that alone would win him the match. But Milan, still modelled on what Arrigo Sacchi built, were defensively phenomenal, could press relentlessly to counter Barca's control, and were clinical in transition. Together, these two sides would be complete, but against each other, it was the perfect clash of styles. On another day, that Barca team were capable of winning 4-0, but Cruyff left it down to chance, which left Guardiola feeling isolated in the midfield, and when the whistle blew for a 4-0 Milan victory, it left Pep feeling hopeless. Guardiola was inspired by Cruyff's genius, but he also learned from his flaws. And that's why in 2023, when he saw his Man City team displaying similar weaknesses as Barcelona in 1994, he made the necessary changes. Pep locked down Nathan Ake and Ruben Dias as pure defenders, fairly similar to that Milan team. He also noticed how Rodri started to get bypassed in transition, similar to Guardiola in that 1994 final. So Pep scrapped his inverted fullbacks and instead had John Stones step into the midfield. Now there was nothing this City team couldn't do. They could defend brilliantly and build out from the back, dominate the midfield with possession but also suffocate you with a press, and they could pass the ball into the net, score screamers or punish you in transition. And this is what finally won the Champions League for Manchester City. A treble secured by combining the ideologies of Johan Cruyff and Arrigo Sacchi. If Cruyff's legacy is total football, then Pep's is complete football. But that's still not enough to convince some people of Guardiola's greatness. The question I have is, if Pep Guardiola isn't the greatest, then who is? Carlo Ancelotti is the only manager to win more Champions Leagues than Pep and has won the title in all of the top 5 leagues. But he only has 5 league titles and has often underachieved domestically. Rinus Michels was voted the best manager of the 20th century, but Pep has taken the philosophy of total football and evolved it beyond what Michels could even imagine. Arrigo Sacchi had 4 amazing years with Milan and is one one of Pep's biggest inspirations for a reason. But like Ancelotti, he underachieved domestically, and outside of his 4 years with Milan, there isn't really much to talk about. What Bill Shankly did to build Liverpool was simply amazing, but his overall legacy doesn't stand up to Pep's. However, Bob Paisley arguably had the greatest spell as a manager of a club with what he did for Liverpool. 6 league titles and 3 European Cups amongst various other trophies, but he was only a manager for 9 years, which isn't enough time in my opinion. For me, there's only 2 names in the same league as Guardiola. So, who is better? Alex Ferguson, Jose Mourinho, or Pep Guardiola? A common argument is that Pep couldn't do what Fergie did at Aberdeen or what Jose did at Porto or Inter. But that's like saying that Guardiola couldn't win the FA Cup with Wigan or the Premier League with Leicester. So therefore Roberto Martinez and Claudio Ranieri are better than Pep. See how silly that is? Mourinho inherited an Inter team that had just won the three-peat under Roberto Mancini. He then spent €167 million and won the treble in his second year, but he left the club in a mess. Whereas Pep at Barcelona inherited a team without a major trophy in 2 years, spent less than €100 million, and then won the sextuple in his first year of management. But consistency is the true test of greatness, and in that regard, Jose just cannot chat to Pep. As Guardiola evolved the sport, Mourinho fell behind. Alex Ferguson did have the longevity though, but what's he done that Guardiola hasn't? Pep has more Champions Leagues and more domestic cups, not to mention a better ratio of league titles per year. Even Sir Alex's greatest achievement, the treble, Pep has done twice now. And don't forget the 2009 Champions League final, when Alex Ferguson was arguably in his prime, Guardiola schooled him. For me, it's not really a debate anymore. Pep Guardiola is the greatest manager of all time. His achievements rival or surpass all of his contemporaries and predecessors. The only manager to win 2 trebles, the only manager to win the sextuple, which he will likely repeat come the end of 2023. He smashed it in Spain, Germany, and now in England, arguably having the most domestically dominant teams in the history of all of those countries. He's a student of the game, learning from everyone around him, always finding the perfect solution for his team. Whether that's taking inspiration from Luciano Spalletti to turn Messi into a false 9 in 2010, or from Roberto De Zerbi to change the shape of his team in 2023. His greatest inspiration is Johan Cruyff. However, perhaps the most important thing that Cruyff taught Guardiola was to never stop evolving, a lesson that would go on to define Pep's legacy. You see, while some managers see their footballing philosophy go on to become stale and even regress, Pep's philosophy is evolution. He's only 15 years into his managerial career, and I can already make an argument this compelling. If you don't already agree, then give it another 5, 10, maybe 15 years, and it will be undeniable.